I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
Who is that on the mic? Is that the old maestro back
Crack
in the house?
that whip, Bobby Cole.
Man, sound the horn for yourself, Jason. There it is.
The OG producer.
Yeah, he was
This
the
is
very
how it
first
all
one we
started
had.
out. Yeah, he's like, when you were like, pod what?
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
It was.
That was 315 or so hours
We've
ago.
done this 315 times.
It seems like it.
No, more than that, because we trashed a couple of them.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Yeah, we're not hitting 100%, that's for sure.
Oh, gosh. Well, so it's right here, turkey season. For some of
It's
us,
here.
it started. For
Yes.
some of us, it hadn't started yet.
So what do you do for all your listeners that are on the edge of their seat as turkey starts? You bring in the best deer guy you know of.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, this will be a few weeks before this airs. So, but that's a good point. We'll get this get him introduced. But we've got one of the young rising stars with
Yes,
the
sir.
MDWFP, Mr.
Oh, I'm going to go out there and say on an even broader scale than the good state of Mississippi, a rising star. So
There you go.
inflate his head, but it's true.
Star.
That's right.
Mr. Pierce Young.
Yeah, I enjoy seeing, Pierce is pretty active on social media, and he's always sharing, like, really good information.
An activist.
Yes, he's an activist.
There we go.
He's active
Our
on social
kind of
media.
activist.
Well, and he grew up not too far from here, running the banks of the Tin Tom. Did you ever break any wildlife laws when you were a young guy coming along?
Never.
Would you tell the truth? If I,
Never.
you ever kill one too many doves?
Oh, man.
No.
It's funny how the things
Pretty
that
good wing shot anyway.
Bobby, have you ever killed one too many doves?
I can't remember.
Pleading the fifth, FIF.
Can't remember.
Fifth.
It's been a long time. I don't get invited on dove shoots anymore, Lanny.
What'd you do?
Damn, move over here and damn.
hey, for the psychology lesson, that is called man in the mirror syndrome.
Oh, that is true.
Because people are so sure that you will do what they would
did.
do if they were in your shoes. So Bobby must have maybe one too many doves once in his life.
Just once.
Man, look, this is like being on an episode of Fraser Crane over here. We've got
Fraser
the good
Crane.
It could get worse.
Fraser, I should say.
It could get worse.
Frasier.
Yeah, you've never seen Fraser?
I remember Frasier,
Yeah.
the sitcom.
Yeah.
With
Chelsea.
Chelsea Grammer.
That's right.
Yeah, Grandma or Grammar.
I don't know.
Grandma.
We're
Yeah, we're
off
getting
track.
Way digressing from
Always.
deer.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about DMAP and all the data that's been collected and why, if you're not a part of DMAP, there's a bunch of states, 20 some odd states now.
22 states, all the southeastern states are part of the map.
Yeah, this is such a good choice, Bobby, to just bring everybody up to date because we're just now getting the reveals of what data's showing from the latest deer season, all that collection. And everybody really wants to know what's going on and what are the trends, just like we do for turkeys and ducks and everything else. But deer, it's time to start talking about it.
Bobby,
Yeah.
what does the acronym DMAP stand for?
Ooh.
Trivia.
Yeah. So it would be deer
Pop quiz.
Deer management something program.
Assistance.
I tried to give you the word. I said
I'll give you a 75 for that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Look,
that'd do
I lived
exactly
off of C's all my life. So
That's a D.
C's get degrees.
That's a D, Bobby.
75?
Yes, sir.
Well, when I was coming along, 75 was a solid C. So, look, blood on the biologic. There's been some turkeys killed. Mac isn't here. I was going to get him to tell a story, but
Yeah.
he's trying to get
No
permission to
wonder
hunt
he was
another
in
place,
so good mood today. I didn't
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, another guy that somebody really long in the tooth around here, Mr. Larry Moore, killed one.
Oh.
Wow.
And look, if you got any pull with the NWDFP, you need to check and see if he checked that one in.
Yes.
if you don't mind.
I'll
think,
pull it up, check on
I
it.
think we got a couple more on the board.
Yeah.
Bobby's got a practical joke credit coming with Larry Moore sometime.
At some point in
We should have a podcast on best practical jokes because that would win the award.
That was a good
we
one.
It's
need to
a good
have
one.
we need to have Larry on sometime.
Yep.
He can tell a story.
Give us some Bobby reveal.
Is he going to let you turkey hunt?
No. No, he's never even let me go to the gate during turkey season. Ever. Lady, who else?
Our president Mr. Bill Suggs is on the board.
Sure did.
You know, it's funny. He's so happy. He's usually grumpy, but he's really happy now for some reason.
Oh, the world is a wonderful place.
And David Andrews' son, Trey Andrews, got his first turkey bird.
Now that's a horn hitter.
That's a horn hitter right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go Trey.
He's a great youngin'. A big old youngin', but a great one.
There's a lot of kids. Pierce, you've probably seen it too. The youth season. There was a lot of kids that Sunday that killed
Oh
turkey.
yeah, absolutely. It was relatively good week. You know, spring break for most of the state in Mississippi. So
What about a current event?
Well, I had a good buddy named Bobby Cole send me this today.
Okay.
So I can't take full credit for it. But this is kind of crazy. Just a little bit of safety tip here. There was a hunter. I guess this was in Pennsylvania.
It was.
That's right, Bobby. That had a hunting accident. It's kind of crazy because he had some problems with a shotgun earlier that day. But he got it fixed. Went back to the woods. Noticed some movement in the distance, and unfortunately believed it was a turkey. And fired his weapon at it, and the turkey cried out, "You just shot me!" So be careful out there. The guy was actually bow hunting in a tree stand.
I don't understand that.
I don't understand that at
Yeah,
all either.
'cause it's
I
not
guess you can hunt turkeys in the fall in Pennsylvania,
Must have been.
and maybe you can shoot them off the limb too.
It must have.
Must have. Anyways, the guy's wounded, but he is stable. So just everybody be careful out there, and be sure of your target.
Yeah.
Before you shoot.
Isn't that one of the top?
That's the first thing you're supposed to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good point to just reemphasize it. And a lot of times in turkey season, when a turkey gets close, Pierce, you know this, you might take that safety off because you're expecting to shoot, and then something happens, you don't get the shot. You get excited. It's easy to forget that you need to put that. You need just check your safety.
Yeah, and be aware of what's on the other side of your target too. With these TSS loads, I mean, it's some serious stuff out there. It's no longer, like it was. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I had something. Thank you, Lanny, for that. That was good.
Thank you, Bobby, for that. 'Cause you saved me.
Thank myself.
Yeah, you pat yourself on the back.
Let's look over here. We got Pierce Young. We've been doing things wrong all along. We've historically been asking we would get Dudley to help us learn about somebody at the end of the podcast. Now we're doing it at the beginning. So this is called Rapid Fire. It's brought to you by our friends at Nutrient. Dudley's got
Dudley, you've got the shirt on. Nutrient Ag Solutions in the house.
the hoodie. Yeah, that's nice. All right, Dudley, it's all yours.
Okay, Pierce, are you ready?
yep, let's go.
Okay. Name a family heirloom vehicle you wish you could bring back.
My dad's Ford F-150. That was my first truck.
There you
go.
95 Ford F-150.
95.
Name a bucket list hunt you haven't gone on but would like to someday.
Elk.
That's a good one.
Ryegrass or rye grain?
Rye grain. Definitely.
Yay.
Annual clovers, perennial clovers, or it depends?
Both.
What's more fun, deer season or turkey season? Have to do it, man.
Yeah, I'm more of a deer guy, but turkey's a close second.
Okay, good answer. Pick one: deer hunt in the morning or hunt in the afternoon.
Afternoon.
What about deer or turkey hunting versus deer and turkey habitat work? Which would you rather do?
Hunt, for sure.
What would be a better trophy to you? A deer Euro mount that has the upper canines, or a stomach Bezoar madstone from a deer?
I'll go with the stone. I've always
Whoa,
wanted.
whoa,
Same here.
whoa. We're gonna need
We'll
some
get into that
yeah,
later.
please do, yeah.
It's early season and they're henned up and not gobbling great after fly down. Are you staying in the turkey woods all day, or would you rather go fishing or get some work done at home?
Crappie fishing, yeah, for sure.
You have an opportunity to burn 10 of your 100 acres in late May. Goal is more turkeys. Do you burn then, or do you pass and wait until August? It's a small patch burn.
August.
Last but not least, you can snap your fingers and either make feral hogs disappear or the top 5 invasive plants go away.
God.
Hogs.
Yay.
Yeah. Hit the horns for
Hit
that
the
one,
horns on
too.
the hogs, 100%.
Yes, sir.
Get them gone.
Then we'll work on the invasive plants.
Can we talk about this stone?
Okay, well, I guess Pierce can extrapolate on that.
Extrapolate.
Extrapolate.
I didn't know he was an extrapolatory type
I didn't
person.
either.
So some people call it a Bezoar stone.
Or a madstone.
or madstone. But if a ruminant, like a goat or a deer, gets some kind of object that they eat that they can't digest, basically the system it'll create basically a stone around that object to kind of protect the lining of the stomach. And it'll usually be it can be all different colors. There's people out there that collect these.
How would you know if you had one?
Check your gut pile or check your stomach.
You'd have to cut into the stomach.
That's
which
why
most
I'm not
people
finding
don't.
them. I've been avoiding. I've
How
been
big?
avoiding
Well,
the
I've
green.
never found one either.
Yeah, how big are they?
They can be really small, but I've seen some that.
Seems
that
like
can
you
be
could
as
just
big
fill
as
the paunch if you wanted to with some.
Yeah.
Of course, surely you're gutting your deer with gloves on, Bobby.
Bobby doesn't gut his own
That's
deer.
right, Bobby doesn't. I forgot Bobby doesn't get blood on his biologic.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
Going back a long way in history, it was supposedly a remedy that you put it in your drink like an ice cube, and it would cure, holistic medicine. It would cure all different ailments and stuff like that.
Oh, it probably has a bunch of micronutrients and stuff attached to it.
I have no idea.
I mean, I never knew.
I
this.
think it'd be
It's like a pearl of a deer
Yeah,
stomach.
but you gotta dig
a
through all that.
probiotic. Think about a probiotic. It
Yeah.
would be, man, have all those helpful bacteria.
Well, I'm gonna find one. We'll put it in your coffee, Bobby.
I've been seeing a lot of people collect these little pieces of gravel from turkeys.
Yeah, in their crawl
very
or crop.
colorful.
They're,
Never knew that was really
they're,
a thing. To be
gizzard.
doing.
Yeah, gizzard.
Correct. Yep.
Is it what's the crawl?
If anybody has one of those Bezoars or however you
Yeah,
pronounce
send
it,
us a
send us a
picture of
photo or tag us or something. It'd be fun to share some photos of that.
I'd like to find one, but I don't want to cut deer stomach. I've been avoiding that my whole life.
Yeah.
You know.
But some folks like to put the stomach contents on a sieve and hose it out and see what they've been eating on. So
I just like to eat the deer.
All right. So thank you, Dudley. That was really good.
That was good stuff.
That was very good.
Learned something. What's it called again?
You're getting better at this, Dudley.
Bezoar,
Bezoar.
Madstone,
Yeah.
Bezoar.
Madstone.
I'll never remember that. I'll remember Madstone, though. So.
Sounds like a new Marvel Comics
Yeah, it does.
movie superhero.
All right. So, Pierce, tell us about the DMAP program. Where do we need to? Where do we need?
Yeah, and
to
that's
start
in
this?
multiple states too.
Yeah, 22 other states have DMAP.
Right. Everybody should.
And to really start, we can talk about just data collection, for deer in general. I mean, right now, this time of year, that's what we're neck deep in is aging jawbones, getting hunters' data sheets, and you don't have to be in a DMAP program to collect data, but it is an important part of gamekeeping, wildlife management to know what's going on with whatever you're doing, and with deer management, we can absolutely collect that data to inform our future decisions to see what's going on. So a lot of the information we're talking about when it comes to deer management would be harvest data, body weights, lactation, but then a lot of that information is kind of useless to a degree without age. So pulling a jawbone to look at the teeth, aging that. And like I said, I probably got 20 boxes in the back of my truck right now. Our agents.
I bet that smells good.
Yeah, not great. Especially when they come into the office and the ladies at the front are just giving a side eye
I bet.
to the guys coming in. But we have special room in the back and off the side of different offices to keep them away. But most of the time, we do talk to our landowners we work with about properly drying them. A lot of people use a fish basket. Put the information card on that jawbone so you know which deer it goes to. Putting it in that fish basket, hanging it up somewhere dry, like in a shed or something, and letting it dry out, and then it doesn't stink or anything like that. But our agency typically does about 15,000 jawbones a year. Before I changed positions, I was typically doing about 3,000 myself in with properties in central Mississippi, but the reason that age data is important to tie to the other data you're collecting is depending on what you want to know about what's happening with the property. So with deer management, we want healthier herds. When we survey our DMAP members, that's the number one answer we get is, why are you collecting this data? And they want to manage healthier deer herds, right? Mm-hmm. And so to do that, we need to be able to compare that across time with that property. And with DMAP, you can do that against other properties in areas and regions as well. So that's an added benefit of DMAP. But even collecting that data just on your own property, and you can do that anywhere that you're harvesting deer on a property. You can collect that data, and you can track the trends of the body weights or the lactation, antler size. But if you don't compare that with age, you may not be getting a good idea of what's actually happening. So, for example, if you collect doe body weights on all of your does, well, let's say you shot a lot of older does that year, 3+-year-old does. And some are born in different years. Some have fawns, some don't. The ones that have fawns are typically going to be drawn down early, lower body weights. They hadn't put a lot of that body weight back on. So you have a lot of variation. So we don't typically want to look at body weights for older deer. We want to look at the body weights for younger deer. Also, the older does tell us really more about what happened much longer time ago when they were born. So the 1-year-old does or 2-year-old does, typically if we can get a good sample size of 1-year-old does, they're typically don't have a lot of variation like a fawn growing throughout the year. You're going to have a lot of variation from October to January in Mississippi. But a 1-year-old doe is completed most of their body growth. They're typically not going to have been bred the previous year as a fawn, but they were born most recently into the conditions that you have. So that's a very good indicator of herd health is by looking at those younger does. But then again, those 1-year-old does not typically going to be bred as a fawn, so you wouldn't want to look at lactation. But if they're all mixed in there without age, then you don't really know, right?
Yeah.
And then also with bucks too, if you shoot a 14-inch 8-point, 14-inch wide 8-point, you may think that's a small deer. Well, if it's a 2-year-old deer, that's average.
That's
right?
called oops.
Yeah.
Dudley knows all about that.
And that brings up another point too is, if you're trying to get bucks to their maximum antler potential, you want to get them to full maturity, which is about 5 to 6 years old. So tying that age, to the deer as well is a good way to look at that, to see if you're meeting the objectives you've set for yourself or you've set with the property.
So do you see when you're analyzing jaw bones and turning it into data, do you see like lactation rates, are they as accurate like if you killed one in obviously bow season and then you killed one like late January? And is it possible that you have a doe that by all observation doesn't seem to be lactating, but she actually could have already weaned one and not be, can you miss it? Does it matter, like are they more accurate late, or does it not matter?
Absolutely. So if you're collecting your own data, that's definitely information you could miss. The later the season gets, the more they dry up. We typically recommend cutting the udder on those.
Right.
Any yellow, clear, white liquid that's in there typically means that they had at least one fawn that year. Now with our DMAP system, and I can't speak for other states, but one of our assistant deer coordinator, Cayman Campbell, when he was at MSU doing deer research, he was looking at that. So we have a correction factor in our system.
How about that? Good.
To adjust for that. So we really needed that because if you have a property that waits really late to January in Mississippi to shoot a lot of their does, which it's more difficult to do at that time of year, but a lot of people do that, trying to get a buck early and then trying to catch up with their does. We need to be able to correct that and put everything on a even playing field, for such a long season like we have.
So,
in
like,
Mississippi.
From bow season, if you all of a sudden saw a drop or of an abnormally low lactation rate, that's probably more alarming because they would be so accurate, right up early in the season.
And typically these changes, other than like a severe drought year, typically when we see drops in either body weights or lactation, it happens over a longer period of time.
Right.
And so that's another good thing about collecting this data, because if you go 1 year and all of a sudden, you're wondering what happened, but you don't have anything to compare it to, or you're not seeing any type of trend, then you don't have a real good explanation of what's actually happening. You're going to make a lot of assumptions, and that's going to influence your decisions for the next year, as well. So another good reason to collect that data.
So how does someone sign up and qualify or whatever? You can only speak to Mississippi, but I'm sure it's fairly similar most places.
Yeah, other states do it differently and look different. We've been doing it a long time. We were the first state. Mississippi was the first state to have a DMAP program. It started as an MSU Deer Lab project with Harry Jacobson and David Gwynn. The first season they did it was in 1977.
Wow.
And that was in, I believe it was Noxubee and Kemper County. So not just down the road, from here is where it was started. Since then, it's expanded. Like I said, all the southern states do it. Everyone does it a little bit differently. The benefit we've had by having the program for such a long time is we started off not having people pay for it. Some other states pay. So it's going to be completely different for every state, but most of the time, the states that have it, it's going to be through either their deer program or their private lands program. We have it through our private lands program. We used to have it through our deer program. Now the private lands program takes care of it. But you just contact us through our website, and we come out and do a site visit. And if we feel like DMAP would be a good tool for your property, then we would want you to sign up and get you to fill out an application and get you in our system. And so you had the requirements where you had to either have 1,000 acres or be able to harvest 10 does, or it was recommended to shoot 10 does. And that was mainly due to needing a good sample size to be able to inform the landowner of what's happening with a good sample. Well, now with our new data management system that we've built over the last probably 5 years now, we can co-op properties within our system. So I've got one co-op in central Mississippi, 7,000 acres. The biggest property with a single landowner is only 250 acres. So they're managing together.
Great.
That's
stuff.
awesome.
Yeah, that is some of the best stories out there. Is those people, because they can do, I say all the time, you can do just as much with smaller acreage as someone with larger, but you really need the cooperation, and it brings people together for a great cause,
Absolutely.
the greatest.
So getting everyone on the same page. So there was no reason where if we were doing a site visit and they had 100 acres or 50 acres and they were next to a 1,000-acre property, that they couldn't also participate in the data collection and putting it and working together. So we really don't have any requirements other than collecting some type of data. And that's what we're talking about is, collecting data, working with us to inform decisions for whatever the goal is for that property or cooperative property.
So I don't want to gloss over this, and just a little quick insert, but Ricky Flint has told me that in the 1977 era, that when those guys were traveling to these counties to say, okay, here's what we want to do, and we need you to shoot some does, that they had to have like a state trooper, an armed state trooper with them.
Wow.
That it got rowdy a time or two.
Oh yeah, they would have because I mean if you go back, I mean, so we're coming up on almost 50 years in Mississippi with the DMAP program. In 2027 will be our 50th year. A lot has changed over that time. You know, and we can probably get into some of that data as well. But you know, back in the 70s and 80s, when the deer population was just growing at that time, from the restocking era from the 30s to 70s, you know, for decades, you know, the biologists were saying you don't need to shoot any does, you know, focus on the bucks. And that's what people grew up their whole life knowing. And then all of a sudden, as the population was growing, you know, there were properties that needed to shoot does, and trying to get that information out there, trying to get the DMAP program going. You know, it was trying to get assistance between the professionals and the landowners to try to do what was right for the herd, not just on a property level, but, you know, on a landscape scale as well. And as with any change, you know, sometimes it can be challenging, you know, and so there were stories of fist fights and, you know, at these meetings and stuff like that.
Wow.
So yeah, things have definitely changed, you know, over time for sure.
You know, that's just passion, though.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it misplaced.
Think about 50 years ago when starting, but I was got to say, and he can do that after I say this, toot our own horn a little bit in Mississippi, but you said we were the first to install or offer a DMAP program. Or, if I'm not mistaken, we were the first to offer a size restriction on antlers of any state.
Right.
And I know for a fact also we were the first state to make jakes illegal to adult people to save them. So hit the horns for Mississippi, being a leader.
We're the first in a lot
Yeah,
of
and I know
things.
I talked to so many of you today that get frustrated with politics, but historically, I think Mississippi has done a pretty good job of listening to the biologists, just like these examples you've given us, and steering away. Nobody's void of politics, and I mean politics. We talked about this during lunch. Has no place much. It means politics should be a servant to wildlife management, not the other way around. And so it gets messed up all the time, and we all know it does. But it's refreshing to see, and two, results will drive popular opinion more than anything. And so when results have followed science from our wildlife biologists and our state agencies, there's your votes out there,
that's a winning
politicians.
combination.
You know,
That's right.
do the right thing. We're all for it.
Yeah, change is slow for sure, but I mean we've seen it get there with deer management, with turkey management.
Yep. It's funny how people were ashamed. It was like a social shame to shoot a doe when I was a kid.
Not in my house.
Yeah, so now it's like people are bragging about how many does they killed over how big the buck was now. I mean,
That's
it's, you
right.
know, they take great pride in it, and so which is a good thing.
No doubt.
So you're a pretty young guy. So you didn't experience that what you're talking about with that resistance to
Oh
shoot
gosh,
does.
it was terrible.
No, I mean, my granddad, before he died, he lived to be 87, and he never shot a doe. So, you know, hearing that, of course, I grew up in a hunting club, you know, in Lowndes County, and you still hear some of the old timers, you know, don't want to shoot does. And I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s where, you know, that shift was happening, you know, and doe harvest was definitely needed at that time, just because we were seeing that peak in
When did the
populations.
doe days kick in Mississippi? I just remember I couldn't sleep.
Oh,
It was
the
worse
doe
than
days.
Christmas.
Some of the doe days started in the 80s. I believe.
Yeah, that's what, because I would have grew up.
Yeah, I
in
want
the
to say
80s.
like December 22nd and 23rd.
It's
was
bigger than
common.
Christmas. I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
telling you, I couldn't.
You know,
sleep.
even before that, the big thing with I mean, it was a huge culture for black powder.
Oh,
in
yeah,
Mississippi,
yeah, that's right.
Because that week or 10 days,
The
or maybe it
primitive
was
weapon
2
season.
weeks of black powder was like where they could harvest does more easily than with a bow to feed the family. Everybody loves burger and sausage and deer meat. But then also that was typically the best like peak of the rut.
Beginning of the rut, really
So
was.
it actually, I kind of miss it. Was they set that back now? It's just rifles all the time,
Yeah,
but
I
it was
missed
pretty
that.
cool. Yeah.
I think it was 2 weekends with a weekend between
Okay.
sandwiched
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was like everybody had a black powder rifle.
I dare say that one of your biggest challenges now is to get people to shoot enough does.
Oftentimes, yes, absolutely. In a lot of places, it is really challenging. Just trying to explain, especially in places that they can't control habitat, like a hunting club or something like that, where the habitat may be poor, they can't sustain a lot of deer, and they're not seeing a lot of deer, even though they may still have too many. That can be a challenge to tell them you need to shoot more deer.
Yeah, because people want to go and they want to see deer. I want to see deer. I'm not seeing deer. My club's not seeing many deer this year. Well, they better like save the data, save the jawbones, take the weights. They better look at it over time because just because you're not seeing deer doesn't mean you don't need to harvest more deer. Too. It's amazing. It's done it to me. It's definitely tricked me before thinking we were just shooting too many deer when it wasn't the case.
And a lot of times when you start seeing the gains of shooting more deer, that doesn't happen until 5 to 10 years later. A lot of times, some of the data we were talking a little bit about a deer data deep dive that I did for a conference last month, looking back at 45 years worth of DMAP data.
Wow.
And it shows that typically, and that was one of the questions I wanted to answer, was how long does it really take to start seeing these changes? And it's about 5 to 10 years, depending on what you're looking at. Typically you're going to see.
And you're speaking mostly about antler size, I'm guessing. As far as the results people are looking for.
Increased body weights, maybe?
Yeah, health comes first, and then the antlers.
Right.
And that kind of goes back to the environmental genetics study that MSU Deer Lab did, taking deer from the coast and the hills and the delta, and it's showing that it takes generations to influence, body size and antler quality. So what we were, I've got some of that data here. So we were comparing these properties to their first year on DMAP, which is typically like a pilot year. That when we meet with a property, we typically say, we need some data first, and then we'll adjust, implement adjustive management to whatever the data is telling us. So year 0 is what we were comparing to over time. And what we showed was typically on DMAP, we have about a 44% increase in doe harvest within the first 5 years. About an 8% increase in lactation and body weights during that time as well. And then by between year 5 and 10 is when we start seeing buck age structure changing, and also buck antler score potential. And I say antler score potential because this is another thing we're able to do with our data management system is the MSU Deer Lab has an equation for if you shoot a buck at 2 years of age, 3 years of age, 4 years of age, what would his antler score be if he made it to full maturity, right?
Oh, cool.
So I wanted to be able to put all the bucks on an even playing field. What is all of their potential? Because you can have buck high grading on properties if they're shooting a lot of young bucks and the lower quality ones are getting older. But when you put everything on the even playing field, looking at antler score potential, you can really see those gains, because you can influence just score by implementing something that has nothing to do with herd health, like a beam restriction or a spread restriction. That's getting them older because it's looking at the average of those antler qualities to get them to an older age, but that's not influencing the health of that buck. So antler score potential is what he would be, whether he's shot at 2, 3, or 4, but what his score would be at full maturity or 5. So what we were showing was, I've got that here somewhere, within 10 years on average in our DMAP program, properties were seeing about a 13% increase in Boone and Crockett antler score potential. That equates to about 14 inches of Boone and Crockett score.
Wow.
Yeah, that's significant.
Yeah.
Very.
Absolutely.
And that means that was the average. So
Right.
some more than they can help themselves
Yep.
in more ways than just DMAP too.
Absolutely.
Let's think about that for just a second. You're saying
So Bobby, that would take yours from 83 up to almost 100
yeah,
inches.
almost
Yeah.
100
You might get 115 inch
Yeah, well,
5-year-old.
I'm being serious here. They're not. But so if you're, typical
I thought we
deers
were.
is, kind of lands right there around 120 to 125. All of a sudden, you're taking him to almost a 140.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that seems like a pretty significant jump.
Absolutely, and that's tied really closely to doe body weights, and part of this analysis that I did with the DMAP data was looking at how yearling or 1-year-old doe body weights change compared to antler score potential. And I got the idea from Dr. Mark Turner and Dr. Craig Harper at the University of Tennessee. They were looking at this and still looking at this a lot across the United States. They use some of our DMAP data to look at this. But I wanted to know for every 10 pounds of 1-year-old doe body weight increase, what does that equate to in antler score potential? And what we showed, for every 10 pounds of increase in 1-year-old doe body weight, you get about 7 inches of antler score potential. So now we have a table to where we can look and say, okay, if your 1-year-old doe body weights are 100 pounds, that means your potential antler score for your mature bucks when they get to that age is going to be around 120 inches. If you want...
What age was that?
Do I?
You said when they get to that age.
5 years of age, full maturity.
Okay.
So when these bucks reach full maturity, they'll be on average around 120 inches if the does on that property are around 100 to 110 pounds. So if you want that average, instead of 120 inches to be, say, 130, 135, we know we need to get your doe body weights for 1-year-old does up to around 120 pounds.
I'm looking for more like 160. What do we need to, these does need?
So greedy, so
I swear,
so
it's
numbers driven.
Just Boone and Crockett Bobby.
gosh.
So again, this
Beans.
is
Oh, man.
this is the average. So
gosh,
I actually did look at what you're talking about. So that's the average. That's about what 50% of the buck population's going to be, right? So if your average doe 1-year-old doe body weights are only around 80 pounds, so poor quality conditions, overpopulated, things like that, your average buck is only going to be about 100 inches at full maturity. Now, you can have the potential of having some 130 class bucks at about 0.05%, right? So very low percentage. But as you shift your doe body weights from 80 to 100 to 120, the percentage of those 130 to 150, they may quadruple. And so when you have does that are weighing around 80 pounds, the potential to have those 160, 170, 180 class bucks is essentially zero. To where you increase your body weights, well, now it's exponentially, growing up. So here I've got it. So
Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Look it up and get because do y'all remember I remember this like it was yesterday when we rolled into Portland Landing down in Dallas County, Alabama. Mr. Joe, God rest his soul, we started saying this is what we wanted to plant. We were showing him the ingredients in some of our food plot blends. And the average doe down there then was weighing 90 pounds. And you remember that second year what they weighed? Because I do.
I don't remember exact weight. I know we got them bigger.
Yeah, it was like 103-pound average doe. He couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to put into perspective what you were saying.
And is that related to, I mean, we all know how healthy the doe is. Kind of, I'm going to get this wrong, but helps if it's a buck fawn.
I didn't know kinda. That's
That's
absolutely what you're saying. Yeah.
The healthier she is, then the more genetic potential that buck fawn is going to release.
Absolutely. That they, from listening to people in podcasts, we've learned for sure that's why, let's say the hot topic is supplemental feeding. Mm-hmm. And there's great, rations for deer but you know what? If that deer is already, unless he has gotten all that from birth, not just as a fawn when he started to graze, but from his mom being super healthy, then he doesn't have the foundation. So to back up what he's saying, so if just say it's 5, like maybe 6, but say minimum for a mature deer is 5, you got to have a really healthy fawn go 5 years with continued good nutrition to put on the kind of increases. In fact, if you're consistent and you have supplemental planted or fed or whatever for that whole length of time, I bet you'll see more than 13%. If you've added to, and you're talking about if you didn't do anything different to the habitat, but if you've planted more stuff, a lot of that is like, how do you manage your habitat? Did you harvest some timber and have a lot of early successional stuff for them too? And, all of that.
Absolutely.
But that's why people are asking me about supplemental feeding for deer. And I was like, sure, but there's a right way and a wrong way, but don't expect a miracle the first year is what I was getting at. And
Absolutely. I mean, that goes to the MSU study where they took deer from the coast, and it took 2 generations, and they were able to catch up to deer in the Delta. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that here in this data too. The average 1-year-old doe in those coastal soil regions is about 80 pounds, where in the Delta is about 120. Well, 110. The full potential in our state that we're seeing is about 120. So even in the Delta, there's room to grow. And they showed that at MSU too. They don't talk about that part a lot, but they showed gains even in the Delta deer as well. So
I think I derailed you, but let's go back to where you were trying to get us to on some doe weights to get the
Bobby's trying to push it to a 160.
Yep.
So to back up a little bit, when we meet with a landowner and we get them in DMAP, not everyone's main goal is trophy management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bobby.
But when we survey our DMAP members, we've shown that over 90% herd health is important. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you can go back to the inception of the Boone and Crockett Club. The reason they were wanting to start that club, Teddy Roosevelt back in the day, was to showcase and keep a record of the best quality animals in an area, because that was a good indicator of health. And that's what we've been able to show with our data.
I knew he was going like that one.
So typically, when you do have more trophy bucks showing up in an area, that is a better indicator of herd health, quality of habitat, and success of conservation efforts as well. So I did look at the data, looking at over time what was happening with antler score potential when it looked at these Boone and Crockett bucks, so 170 inch bucks, and over time that potential will typically increase with body weights as well. So we saw with our DMAP program, within 10 years, the potential for these Boone and Crockett bucks to be in a population doubled. Within 20 years, it tripled. Now, this is still a low percentage, going from about, 0.4% to 1%. So even though you have a higher percentage of bucks on the landscape, it's still very rare to have these upper end 170 Boone or Crockett type bucks. But if you increase the body weights of your does, so an 80-pound doe average for 1-year-old does, get about 0.04% of your bucks that could be Boone and Crockett quality. 100 pounds, which is kind of the state average, goes up ninefold, 900% to 0.4. 120-pound does on your property, and this is the upper end. This is higher than what we see even in the Delta. But properties, not just in the Delta, even in the coastal plain and the hills, that are managing their herd to be the healthiest possible, we are seeing these properties have 120-pound does, and that percentage goes up to 3%. So you went from 0.04 to 3. That's a 64 times or 640% increase in the potential to have these Boone and Crockett
Hugely
bucks.
significant.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when you see one of these great big deer, though, and every few years there's one gets killed somewhere around here. It's kind of like winning the lottery almost.
It really is. And to even go further, so that's the potential to grow those bucks. When we look at our DMAP data, we looked at how many of these bucks were actually making it to 170 inches or more, and it was only 0.07%. Most of those were mature 4 or 5+ year old bucks. However, most of those that had the potential to be a Boone and Crockett, 57% were harvested at 2 years of age. So they're not expressing, they're a really big deer for a 2-year-old. Obviously, they have 40% of growth still left to go when they get shot. 33% were shot at 3 years of age, and only 10% were making it to 4. So most of your Boone and Crockett bucks, in the state of Mississippi at least, are getting shot at 2 and 3 years of age. Mm-hmm. So they're out there. A lot of people say, we're not a Boone and Crockett state, but we have the potential to be. Those bucks are out there. It just takes healthier healthier management, healthier populations, and you can see that. And on DMAP, we have properties all the time that are seeing their full potential as well.
You used the word a moment ago, high grade, and that's what's occurred over a lot of properties through the years. Those younger, really good, a lot of potential bucks would get shot because they meet the minimum requirement that the club sets.
Yeah, but but that's I hate to say this word, that's the dumber deer though. The 2-year-old beautiful 8 or 10 point is what they usually kill a lot of because they aren't, they hadn't gotten old enough to be so elusive and, sad, but happens.
Yeah,
we're seeing a big shift in the properties we work with in DMAP compared to 20 years ago. A lot more people are using age as a criteria compared to antler criteria. When you have just antler criteria, like many properties have for the last 30, 40 years, you're going to have high grading. You're going to have the best quality potential bucks reaching above average sizes earlier on in life. So like in the Delta, if you see a 150 class deer and he's 2 years of age, those deer exist.
Yeah.
And they look really big when they're 2 years
they're
old.
not hard not to shoot because that looks even bigger because they're on a smaller body.
Yes, exactly.
It looks like a giant.
I think you're exactly right. I hear more people send pictures instead of what does he score, how old do you think he is?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
And I think we can attribute that to some of these organizations and state agencies teaching people.
Yep.
And probably a lot of social media too, just being able to look at Facebook groups and people sharing information, things like that. But it's just so much more readily available now, and I think our agencies and land grant universities are spreading the wealth.
Well, when other neighboring clubs or landowners see the results of one, they're like, "How'd you do that?" Well, here's what we did. Got on DMAP, did this, did that. I mean, so nothing like results to get people to accept and move it.
Lanny, we're always in here. We always have these interesting guests, and you're always on your computer. What's up?
I'm looking at Onyx the whole time. I love the app, but I love the desktop too.
My favorite thing is Bobby doesn't know how to shut his computer down, so I can go in there and share his pins to my account.
That's what you were doing in there this morning.
Yep.
Back during deer season, I shot a couple of big bucks.
Of course.
As I'm looking for them, I can turn on this tracking feature.
Yeah.
And I can see where I've looked.
And I use that feature too for spreading seed, spreading fertilizer, spraying. It really keeps you on track.
Onyx is a great company. Look, we know Jared. They're hunters,
They
just
are.
like we are. So
Yes,
they're
no
serious
doubt
about
about
this.
it.
The way they've designed this thing, a hunter and a gamekeeper can take advantage of it and make their property better.
Use coupon code Mossy Oak to save 20% off of your Onyx subscription.
Yeah, and Mac, you shouldn't do that now. Richie, you got to help me. Okay.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
Hey y'all, Jimbo here with Drake Waterfowl and Old Tom Turkey, talking about some of our new turkey stuff for this spring. This is going to be my favorite, and I hope everyone else's, the Throwback 80 collection. This is heavy duty, rugged, durable, pre-washed, 100% cotton twill that comes broken in and comfortable from the get-go. You'll love it. It's just like the old stuff you used to wear. Double layer reinforced on the knees and elbows to kind of help it hold up when you can't call and gotta crawl. Triple needle stitching for added durability. This is nice stuff. I promise you'll like it. Check it out at a dealer near you or drakewaterfowl.com/Old Tom.
Just out of curiosity, too, a question or two. One would be, wouldn't you recommend that, like, so on the program, that people would concentrate on going ahead and try to harvest as many as healthily or whatever they should early in the season instead of waiting? I mean, to take the pressure off, even the rut might not be as stressful on them, and certainly the winter food might not be as stressful on them. I'm just curious if you would recommend that.
Absolutely. I tell people that all the time. We have some data, some other data we collect from DMAP members, our observation data. So hunter observation, they take a little log book with them throughout the season. And we've been collecting that data on some properties for a good number of years. And we always see that doe sightings are always the highest in November before the rut here in Mississippi. And then it goes down to the lowest during the rut. And it never reaches the same point in late season post rut, and that's multiple reasons. I mean, there's less deer just because some of them got shot, but also that there's a lot less movement from those does as well. Some other reasons to shoot early, not just to get those numbers, but the more number of mouths you can take off the property earlier. That's providing a lot more browse. That's important throughout that winter time period for the deer that you have. But also, if you can shoot a lot more and get that ratio more closer to 1-to-2 or 1-to-1.
Improves your rut so much.
Improves the rut dramatically. You're going to see a lot more activity right before peak and even through peak. If you have a week or two where over 50% of your doe population is coming into estrus, that buck is going to hang with her for about that 24 to 36 hour period. At the same time, a lot of other does are going to be coming into estrus too. So much better to have more defined rut, more competition. Is going to get a lot more buck moving on your property.
So, I mean, seeing a good deer, it's like one of the most talked about things. Man, I want to, hunt during the rut. Saw a good deer, I want to see a good deer. The statistical chance of that goes way up if you've already harvested the does down to what he's talking about, 1-to-2, 1-to-1 even, because they're going to have to, it's just a statistic of how much they travel is how much you're going to chance to see them and kill one. And so if you increase the movement by probably a couple hundred times, or a couple of 100% anyway. You know, at least I've noticed, and I've noticed when we haven't harvested early, where you don't see as much, and the whole like the rut's not as, and the lockdown's even worse, and all of those things. I think for all those reasons, that's kind of the point I was thinking. I've learned if you can, as early as legally possible, harvest especially your does, or any, you know, if it's, I know it's controversial about culls, but if you believe in that, you know, do it early, you know, before he has a chance to breathe.
Shoot them.
It's turkey season. It's about to start. Everybody's, you know,
Pecking around.
Got turkeys on the brain. Right. But we need to be thinking about our deer too. And this is time I'm assuming you're starting to recommend people get whatever spring plantings they're looking at doing, getting ready for those, soil sampling, doing all that. This really is a year-round responsibility to do it right.
Our busiest month is always February in Mississippi as far as our private lands program, people wanting us to come out, do site visits. Because as soon as deer season ends, for most of the state, you know, January 31st to the first of turkey season, it's about a 6-week period. That's when our site visits peak, you know. And so we're doing a lot of site visits. We're collecting a lot of data from the landowners we work with, aging those jawbones, getting that data turned in, and then we'll spend much of the summer looking at that data once they get entered. And we see a lot of variation too in that data as far as so when we're aging jawbones, one reason you may want to go with a professional biologist in a DMAP program compared to just looking at this information on your own is we see a lot of variation in the teeth that we're trying to age. So I can think of 2 counties like Southern Holmes County, North Yazoo County in Mississippi, where it's almost like the top teeth are misaligned a little bit. So you get almost no wear on a lot of those back teeth, and it'll look like a 2-year-old. But if you weren't looking at hundreds and thousands of jawbones like we do in that area, you might not catch that. If you were just looking in a book on or a YouTube video on how to age a jawbone, they wouldn't talk about that.
Y'all just know those little idiosyncrasies.
Little idiosyncrasies down in like Southwest Mississippi, which I haven't worked with a lot of properties down that way, but I've helped biologists a lot down that way, and it's almost like their teeth wear more to the outside. So it would be really sharp, you know, on those cusps that you're looking at on the inside, but really worn down on the outside. So if you're looking at just your individual property, you might not pick up on that. Another benefit to using the DMAP program compared to collecting your own data, you can look at trends on your own property, whether it's going up or down, you know. But in our DMAP system, we compare not only to your own property, but to the average. And then with some of the DMAP data that I've looked at, now we kind of know what the maximum potential for any property in the state is as well, you know, for what your doe body weights, you know, can be. So those are some other things to where if you've got a property and your 1-year-old does are only, you know, 80 pounds and it goes up to 85, well, that's still, you know, 10, 15 pounds below the state average. You know, it's getting a little better, but it's if you want a healthier population, that's not where you want to get complacent at, right? And so we kind of help push properties, you know, in that direction. But.
So I was just to be clear about it, so someone reaches out, you go, you know, you obviously kind of examine the place, the acreage, you know, take a look at it, and so and they qualify. What's the flexibility on harvest? So you would actually the state would be the one to say, this 2,000 acres needs to harvest 22 does and 6 bucks, or, you know, I don't know how you would put that on there. What flexibility? I mean, so that are you still bound by like 5 does and 3 bucks, or can you just, if you have a tag, you can go harvest? type thing?
So that's a great question. So for many of the earlier decades, 70s, 80s, and 90s, when we didn't have a liberal doe regulations, statewide bag limit, that was what a lot of the properties were getting in DMAP 4 was these doe tags. So this program, it's a professional suggestion of what you should do. You don't have to follow it; it's your own property, right? But we do give recommendations, and if those recommendations exceed what you can do legally, we have tags, management doe tags, war management buck tags. Most other states are going to have this as well, to be able to give those to you so you can exceed the bag limit for good conservation, right? So if you want to go out with you and one other buddy on opening weekend rifle season and whack the does and put them on the trailer and go donate them all, at a processor, and you're at 15 does, which is 5 over, for 2 people. If you've got those DMAP tags on them, you can roll right along. If a game warden, conservation officer stops you, he's going to see those tags, and you can go on to the processor and get them done. So
yeah, that's great common sense too.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to abuse a property from DMAP tags, and so the point is to harvest what the state recommends you to harvest.
Yeah, and
and keep it. And the thing about it, if anything, and you're managing a deer herd on a significantly sized place, especially, is like you're better off to keep the herd under the carrying capacity, not just try to stay right at it anyway. So that's just common sense to let them in. Plus that would make it easier to go ahead and get them out of the way early on and help everything better.
Yeah, so it's like body weight. You can get a digital scale for probably $20 these days. What else? You check their hooves for hoof sloughing.
yeah, that's a extra check box, that we put on the sheet just to help us gauge where there may have been a little bit of a EHD outbreak. And in more northern states, that's a lot more important to help keep a check on that. But really a scale and a tape measure, to weigh all the deer, and then the tape measure to measure the antlers. Then that's really all you need. A hoist, if you don't have one, they make the ones that you can put on a tree nowadays, stuff like that. So, and again, these recommendations are just a suggestion, but we've shown, looking at this data, that if you follow the recommendations, it absolutely works.
Oh, yeah.
I actually looked at for a portion of the time that we've had DMAP, we keep up with the percentage of doe harvest recommendations that were met. So we give a recommendation that gets logged. Next year when they harvest deer, we can see what percentage they actually met. When we categorized properties that were meeting over 90% of our doe harvest recommendations compared to, I broke it down by multiple other percentages, but really compared to everybody else, we saw increases in buck age, beam, score potential of Boone and Crockett deer. Doe harvest went up a lot. Yearling doe body weights went up, and adult doe lactation went up. So every metric we looked at, it was significantly higher percentages that it went up over time on these properties that are working with us.
Wow.
And following our recommendations as well.
Well, based on what you said also, a guy might be thinking, well, I only got 100 acres. But if he contacts you, you may know where there's another surrounding landowners that you could join up.
Absolutely. Or if they want to create their own co-op, if they know their neighbors, even working with properties, I work with some properties that it may be 3 neighbors, down a road, that they don't all connect, but they know what their neighbors are doing. So-and-so's mother owns that over there. They don't shoot anything. Over here, they shoot a lot. That's information that's useful. So we can put all that into a co-op, and now we know the 2 or 3 properties that are working with us, how much they need to compensate for the ones that are not harvesting any deer. due to an absent landowner or something like that. Because if you've got 1,000 acres and you got to shoot 10 does, but 500 acres of it is not hunted, well, on that 500 acres, you still got to shoot 10 does, instead of 5 does, if it was broken out that way,
I don't know why somebody wouldn't do this. I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer. I bet everybody that participates in it is happier with the progress that their deer herd's making.
And you learn so much about deer management.
Well, I mean, say you think about it, you've got free consultation by the people who see more than anybody on deer management. I mean, I know there's a lot of really good, like, private deer management people out there, and, big landowners are hiring them, but the people in the state are,
Right
like they see more data and see more management and the results of it than anybody. And why wouldn't everybody can get that for free? I mean, to enhance your
one of
place.
the strongest words in the English language.
Yep, it's a big one.
So is it? I mean, when you sign up, I mean, a guy like you or Josh Nunley comes out and looks at your place, and do you leave them with like a starter kit? It's got these forms, or is there any electronic processes?
So it depends. We do have like paper copy applications if people aren't tech savvy.
Yeah.
I've still got a couple clubs. I mail their report in, to them every year. They're still old school. But we do have...
Just say they're old. They're old.
We do have electronic forms and stuff like that. And we really try to tailor to everyone's situation.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
So, that's how we've operated. Like I said, typically, we just did a survey of a lot of our DMAP members and even members that have dropped out of DMAP. I just got this data in, just within the last week, so I'm still looking through it. But one of the things that we were able to gain from some of this data is the ones that dropped out of DMAP. Why? And most of them, it's either deer management fatigue, or they're not seeing the benefits yet. And when you actually look at the ones that are dropping out, they're dropping out within 1 to 3 years on average. We have data showing that once you stay in DMAP after 3 years, you pretty much stay in it the long haul. On average, most DMAP properties on average have been around 9 years that we've been collecting data on them. So a lot of the ones that are dropping out, they're dropping out before they even start seeing the gains. Like we said, it takes about 5 to 10 years to really start seeing these.
Yeah, and that's deer management 101. I mean, it's going to take 5 years.
Well, one thing they're not thinking about, though, is so they haven't really seen dramatic results. But I'll guarantee you, if they haven't been practicing DMAP principles, whether they officially sign up or not, they're going to see a continued deterioration of their place, and it's going to get worse and worse. And so, I mean, to me, I'd be like, if you gave me that choice and said, well, it won't get any worse, you can prevent it from getting worse, you can keep it where it is, it's pretty good right now. That's a big, I mean, I wouldn't want people to get out because you don't see dramatic results is a really bad
especially after 1 to 2 years. I
mean, so if you don't adhere to these principles, you're going to continue to deteriorate and get worse and worse.
Yeah, that's a long-term plan.
So deer management fatigue, is that a thing?
Yeah, we've seen that nationwide. That was coined by Kip Adams with that National Deer Association, where they collect all that data from all these states. And we've seen that. We've seen that in Mississippi. Other states are saying that especially long-term, sometimes collecting this data year after year after year, and maybe property goals change or individual goals change, and you just get tired because it is work, right? You get what you put in,
That's right.
with wildlife management, and sometimes after a while that can wear on them. A person.
Yeah, I hate to bring it up, but I've heard it,
Oh, yeah.
A guest, I just want to shoot a doe and get home. Right. I just want to help you shoot a doe and go. And then the landowner ends up having to do all the data collection. But I can see how it could erode if you're,
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
That's why they call it fatigue.
I mean, I've got one example in central Mississippi. This guy has 300 acres, and he shoots a large number of does every year, about 25 to 30 on 300
Nice.
acres.
Wow.
That's a lot of does.
Wearing them out.
You know.
Who?
But none of his neighbors shoot any does.
So he's got all that food they just pour into him
Yeah.
constantly.
And so he's constantly attracting these deer from these other properties. They're not shooting those. He is. But things aren't really getting better just because he doesn't have the cooperation. And we see that a lot, on bigger scales too.
Yeah.
I've seen that with a 1,000-acre property next to a 3,000-acre property. He was still shooting big deer on 1,000 acres without shooting many does because his neighbor that's bigger was stacking them up, right? And had a lot more habitat management, a lot more food, so he was benefiting from, that better neighbor, So it all kind of depends, right?
I got a quick one.
Yeah.
What's the oldest deer you have in DMAP records that if you could think of that off the top of your head?
Like how old?
Yeah.
So with the tooth wear technique, we can age up to 8. We call it 8+. That's as far as we can go.
Gotcha.
With a tooth replacement and wear technique. However, there was one really old doe that was, it was the most worn down I had seen in my career. So I took it and I got it sent off to a lab to be semina manuali tested, which is where you cross section the root of the tooth and they count the rings. And that doe, I think, was 13 and a half years old.
Nice.
So my big deer age story, and this is known fact because it lived in the backyard, but Peggy, Holly, Chris Hawley's wife,
Yes,
and I
sir.
grew up together. Uncle Bud, her dad, who raised me just about like Mr. Fox did, and he had run over, I think it was twin fawns with a bush hog. When he was bush hogging, he has a cattle farm. And I think he killed one, and he took the little doe home. And, it wasn't illegal, way back a long time ago. And they had a chain link fence in the backyard. They called her Bambi. She was just a pet. She'd come in the house, jump in the bed with Peggy. They fed her, and basically she lived in the backyard. They fed her horse creek feed. She lived to be 24 years old. And that's known fact. And the state of Alabama said that's the oldest whitetail we've ever heard of or known of. We would like to put her in the whatever state museum
Hall
thing.
of Fame.
And in her 24th year, during the winter too, freaking coyotes jumped in the chain link fence. This is a very small backyard and killed her and ate her before they could save the rest of her.
Didn't Auburn want her or something?
I think it was the state of Alabama, if I'm not
Came and
mistaken.
collected her.
Yep. Oh, the Auburn they may have, but that's 24 years old.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have.
And that's the time they were saying that's a record, so they wanted to get her mounted and put her in the museum and they were so excited. And then it was just, oh my gosh, it was awful.
I think before that one, there was another doe in captivity that was 22, and then there's been some that have been 20 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about
This is a little bit like the size of this little studio we're in. I mean, this is a tiny little backyard she lived in all the time. And twice a buck jumped into the backyard and bred her. And one time the phone.
That stuff's undefeated,
The phone, it is. It's crazy.
What about the heaviest? Yeah, have you got any idea on that one?
Oh, yeah.
The heaviest deer, man, I'd have to look.
For a long time, there was when deer were just getting here at Brooksville. For a long, long time, was the heaviest deer. I forgot 300 and something.
Oh wow!
Oh
You
yeah.
seen some 300s?
I've heard some.
About 4 years ago, I had 4 properties in the Delta.
South Delta, I bet.
South Delta.
Yep.
That had
Huge
deer go
bucks.
over 300 pounds.
Wow.
Bucks.
That's what I'm looking for.
Had one property. Had one property. They killed a good number of bucks, and the smallest buck was like 268.
Golly.
For some reason, that Yazoo, Delta National, Southern, it's always had
Big
great
old
big
deer.
old bodies.
Yeah.
And even the racks weren't as big as the bodies, although it would be like a giant deer over there would have tons of mass, but just kind of short, blunt antlers and stuff. They didn't. I mean, there's some unbelievable deer over there. It's awesome.
What about
the body sizes were crazy?
What about huge does? What in Mississippi? I mean, are you talking about 150 to 160 happens?
I mean, we've had some 200-pound does.
Golly, making me jealous over here, Bobby.
Now,
I was going to ask you, why don't y'all start this? Lanny has always wanted a scoring
system for
does.
How long their ears are.
Nose, nose. Oh, long nose, yep.
Yeah. The weird thing about the does that are typically over 200 pounds, when a biologist has looked at them, a weird fact is a lot of them did not have reproductive tracts.
Okay.
There was a property that in Lowndes County that has had multiple big does harvested, 180 to 200 pound. I know at least one 200 pound doe, and those deer did not have reproductive tracts.
What does that tell you about the stress it puts them through?
You don't have a Onyx pen or anything for that place, do you?
I do, but
secure and undisclosed location.
But that's
not, amazing, because these people that we knew, from 30 years ago, they were raising these deer in Wisconsin and all, but they were there's a shed from it right there.
Yeah.
They were they had them in captivity but a big area, you got like hundreds of acres, but they would double fence so they could never even have a chance to smell like a doe in heat and be stressed over it. So their whole life they never went through the rigors of the rut, because they were saying it made like a 30% difference in the size of the antlers and the health, body weight, blah, blah, blah. So it definitely proves. I didn't think about that for does, but
we saw that
sure.
with bucks at the MSU deer pens. If we didn't breed some of the bucks, one year they usually their antlers blew up.
Wow.
Sure.
How about that?
Less stress.
So if you can find a monk buck,
you're good to go.
Yeah.
So
the Buck Monastery.
What do you think about what is the state of the deer herd in Mississippi? I know we've been talking about the Southeast in general, but
yeah, so it's been going through some changes for sure. Overall, our statewide estimates up until this past season have shown increased deer population estimates. Now we don't have tagging or reporting for deer in Mississippi, so we don't have that county level data. But I can guarantee you that there's big county differences. Central Mississippi, where I have historically worked with properties, are saying very high populations of deer in those areas, and there's some other areas in the state, especially these pockets where the timber market is not as good, and the habitat's not as good. Populations are definitely down. We've actually been hearing a lot from South Mississippi, like some of the coastal county areas down there, that they feel that their populations have drastically increased in some areas as well. So overall, we can say that statewide, the population was growing. I think this year, with the consistent cold temperatures we had from Thanksgiving through really the rest of the season, pretty decent food plots. We had that October drought, but most people were able to get a food plot to grow. And then we had kind of a lack of acorns. We had some white oaks early, swamp chestnut oaks kind of early, but in general the red oak crop has kind of failed across most of the state, which typically in good acorn years we see doe harvest or deer harvest in general go down. And then poor acorn years, we see harvest go up. So with all those factors coming into play for this past season, I expect when we get the numbers in this year, we're going to see a big increase in harvest. I'd be surprised if we didn't.
So throw Texas out just for the sheer size of it. Would Mississippi have more whitetail deer than any other state?
It would be pretty dang close. Definitely density of deer.
Wow.
It's going to be at the top of one of the highest densities.
I mean, I'm just turned 60.
Wow.
I feel like I'm it's not about me, but I'm just saying I
But
can
it's
remember
about
when
you.
I was 15 and you'd go hunting and you might see a couple of deer and you were just
Overjoyed.
two.
Yeah.
And then now
Now,
in
if
the
you don't
afternoon,
see
you
10, you're mad.
Yeah.
And that's before he gets out of his driveway.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it really is.
It really is, yeah.
yeah. So I mean,
It's amazing how they're the suburban. I mean, it's pushed them in.
they're so adaptable.
Oh,
too.
my
They're
gosh,
just,
yep.
they're just everywhere. And I'm sure you're seeing it, but in the last few months, it seems like driving home, they're in all the little eating stuff you wouldn't normally
So
see.
today, coming up here, I'd text you maybe 9. It's a weird time, honestly, and we're in the spring. This is like the 18th of March, a couple of days after turkey season started. Like, wasn't even especially cold. And so driving back from out in the country around 9 o'clock, there were deer everywhere, all up in town, like by the old Walmart up here north of town, all up through there. I bet I saw 40 or 50 or more deer just from the highway. And it was so weird. What would trigger them to be out like that middle of the morning in March?
What's the moon, Laney?
I'm sure it's full. Let's ask
It
Bronson.
was crazy.
So we're finally getting into spring green up for most of the state. If you look at the buds on the trees and the grass starting to get a little green.
It's a little late this year.
It is late. It's
Don't you think that severe cold shut it back a little bit?
It did. The one we had about a month ago, definitely. And so these deer had a fairly stressful, winter in comparison to other years for a mild winter state. And with the increased population over the last half decade, there's been a lot more late winter stress on the deer. So now that we're finally seeing some spring green up, they're getting out and needing to
Taking
pack on.
advantage.
Yeah.
You got any tips for a guy looking for sheds?
I'm not the one to ask about that because I've never had very much success. The people I know that are big shed hunters, most of them are in other more northern states, and they have always said they have trouble in the southeast finding sheds.
It's because cover's everywhere.
Yeah, and squirrels. I mean, they eat the fire out of them.
Yeah, but
Run off
you
with
can
them.
find them.
I found one Saturday, actually.
The suggestions I have that I've heard from other people that do it a lot is find the hot food source and work your way out.
There you go.
From that. Yeah. So right now, if you've got a clover food plot, likely they've been hitting it pretty hard late winter, and so finding those trails coming out from those high protein clover plots that they really need right now to recover from the season, and work your way out from that. One thing we suggest people not doing is making these cages or things to prematurely knock them off. That could cause some pedicle damage,
Sure could.
which could make an infection and ultimately could kill the deer.
Don't want to do that.
I'm fascinated with sheds, and I've got some friends that are really hardcore, but frankly, I'd rather be doing habitat work during shed dropping season.
Yep.
Yep.
That's a great time.
Good time to do it.
And if I'm burning and see a shed, great, or if I'm turkey hunting and see a shed, great, but I'm going to be spending my time doing habitat work instead.
I'll tell you, a great way to find sheds is prescribed burning.
Yeah.
You light a fire, you let it go through that stand, those sheds pop.
Shine out there.
Like you wouldn't
They
believe.
pop.
Popping.
And it's been a good burn year, too. It's been relatively good conditions across our state. And across the southeast.
I need to put some fire on the ground now.
Yeah, it's been a good year.
Quit rolling your eyes.
Fire truck
I
landing.
do, man.
Old Fire Marshal Bill over here.
So, guys, what else we need to be asking?
Quick question. So sheds is a thing. I just saw a really cool camera picture like yesterday of this gorgeous 2-year-old. I mean, beautiful. He's an 8. He could get bigger. He's going to be a giant. But he's still got both sides. And I can remember some places like, for whatever reason, in Alabama, I've seen like in April, not in a big deer, but deer have both sides in. I'm seeing sheds at the end of the season. So what is the parameters? Is it regionality? Is it like the stress they went through or the diet for the winter or possibly disease? I had them fall off a deer I shot that had been injured one time. But what's the variation? There's such a great variation, it seems, down here.
Right.
In when they shed.
Yeah, so it mainly has to do with photo period, which they all experience that at the same time. But the individual variation can be just individual deer, how much stress he's been getting. Typically, the more stressed they are, the earlier they're going to drop their antlers. So in Mississippi, you can start seeing bucks shedding their antlers in mid to late January. Most of them are shed in February through early March. But you can see them hold on as long as April a lot of times. And some of that's just due to individual variation, but we do know that the more stressed a deer is, typically the earlier they're going to drop their sheds.
So we've lightly discussed this before, but it doesn't seem like that deer that drops his antlers in April has as long of an antler genesis period as a deer that dropped his antlers in January.
They'll typically, because we've seen this in the MSU deer pens with some of the bucks. Like we had some that got bred one year and some that didn't, and some were older and some were younger, and we saw a lot of that variation. But typically, the growth period is about the same. It's just shifted one way or the other. So where you might have, and also growth rate. On some of them increases. So we had one younger buck shed his antlers earlier, but then he was the last one to shed his velvet, where the other buck shed later, but his antlers grew a lot faster, and he shed his velvet a lot sooner. But in general, I mean, it was pretty close within, a few weeks of each other.
So where we know that a gestation period.
Gestation period.
Yeah.
Gestation,
is, correct me if I'm wrong, around 102 days?
You're wrong.
No.
202 days.
You said
right.
correct.
Yeah, 202 days. So is there an antler genesis days for it? Is it so many days?
Yes, but it's not as hard lined as gestation is. It can vary by weeks. And I'm trying to remember. Let's see, about 8 months. I want to say is about how long. I used to know exactly how many weeks, because one of the jobs I had at the MSU deer pens was taking pictures of some of the bucks as soon as they lost their antlers to when they shed their velvet. So I'd be out there every week. But I cannot remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, somewhere around 7 or 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, guys, it's been really interesting.
Very
It has.
interesting. Love talking
I
deer.
have one final question, and in your mind, is there one other data point you would like to see added to the DMAP list? Is there something that you may do kind of on the side when you're making decisions for your place that you'd like to look for?
Good question.
So we keep up with browsing intensity year after year, camera survey data, observation data. We're working with our system and with MSU on some work where we're going to put some habitat metrics to track over time for properties as well. That's going to be very useful. We're also going to build a TMAP program, Turkey Management Assistance Program.
Whoa.
No turkey tags, Bobby. Sorry.
With once we have that option and include that with our spring gobbler survey and our pulper hen survey in the summer. Some other metrics. So for more advanced people as far as deer management is concerned, kidney fat index.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I've heard of
another
that one a lot. Yeah.
that would be cool if you could rate the fat. If it has a lot of fat, a medium amount, or
We've always been
So
kidney fat's a big indicator. What about liver?
liver, I don't know anything.
I know when I was a kid where I grew up, they had too many deer and they were checking for liver flukes and they were slices of liver and you could just see them real clear. But then sometimes some biologists back in the day would always be looking for if they have disease, it'll manifest in the liver, be discoloration and whatever, almost like scarring and what on it.
Yeah.
So
So
I look a lot, and I haven't seen, after having listened to that and seeing stuff as a kid, but I haven't really ever seen a lot of liver discoloration.
Yeah.
So historically, to get our breeding date maps, we've done herd health checks on properties where we go harvest some does well after the season. Typically March timeframe to measure the fetuses and to look at kidney fat index. Kidney fat, that can be variable year to year. Just like another one that Bronson Strickland likes, rump fat.
Oh yeah.
If you're skinning the deer, a lot of places, nowadays, don't skin them. They just take the whole deer to the processor. But that's a good indicator of that year's fat. And so the other one with diseases, like Toxie was saying, looking at the liver or any other type of diseases, because the more stressed a deer is, the more susceptible they're going to be to getting different common diseases like liver flukes and ticks and things like that. So typically healthier deer are going to have less of those things, So that's another. Those are some other points people could look for as far as evaluating their individual herds for sure.
Cool.
Good stuff.
It's been interesting.
Yes,
Very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Mississippi, Toxie's right. Mississippi, you got a lot of good things.
Yeah.
Mississippi has a lot of good things going on.
Yeah, we're super proud of.
And
y'all,
Pierce Young
MDWFP.
is at the top of the list of
That's
that.
right.
Well, I'm like Dorothy on the Wizard of Oz. There's
Ain't
no place like home.
That's exactly right.
And we've got a whole team of
You
great
do.
biologists.
You guys do.
And have for a long time.
Yeah, it's great what y'all do working with the File on the 40 program, the DMAP program. There's a lot of resources you can really take advantage of. So
Yeah.
reach out to them. They're here to help.
Do you think the guys down there and y'all in that building down there in Jackson, on Tuesdays they listen to our podcast?
I'm sure they do.
So I'm told that the Blair if I got this right, the Blair Batson Children's Hospital in Jackson, that they play our podcast to get the kids to go to sleep.
Oh, that'd be pretty.
And they said they love it when Toxie's on there.
Are they, Bobby? You put me to sleep just sitting in here with you, so it's easy.
Pierce, we appreciate you coming up here.
Yeah,
all the hard
thanks for
work
what you're doing. Yeah, it's great stuff.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah,
So proud of
exactly.
y'all, honestly.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Great
Enjoy
resource
it
for
every
us.
time.
Yep. All right. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Cleve.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.